Chapter 16, Releasing the Esoavel. There were watchmen at all 4 Olinthial gates. Negad monitored their reports and directed messengers to deliver updates on the enemy's activities. A watchman approached Negad with an updated report. "Sir, I have news from the eastern gate. We noticed more changes on rivets. It has odd patterns seared into its surface. The pattern strongly resembles Sar's palace, and I could clearly make out the 8-pointed star. I do not know what to make of it. Do you think they are trying to re-establish Sar's headquarters?" "I am not sure, but your report will be given to the Western Watchman," Negad said before being interrupted by a watchman. "Sir, the same patterns can be seen on Zohar. The 8-pointed star from Sar's palace courtyard is all over the stone, and there are some other smaller patterns. It appears that Abaddon and his men are now moving toward a dam." "Very well. I will add this to the log and inform the Western Gate to be on alert." The watchman of the Western Gate received the announcement of Abaddon's approach to a dam, but a more critical announcement was given to them about an increased flow of Esoavel into the cosmos. It was making it more difficult for the Olinthial Host to track the enemy's movement. Negad remembered his instructions from Or to not act until Rahab's judgment had been fulfilled, but he was becoming increasingly concerned about Abaddon's motives on a dam. The red stone had once been Negad's personal responsibility. He knew how important Sidon and the monuments were to Or and of their prophetic implications. The surface of the table of happenings had remained active as Sar's orders to beautify the cosmos were being carried out. Kohengal spoke first. "You would think that as a cherub, Sar would be more creative in his approach." "Not without our wisdom," Nekhamabed retorted. "I hate to watch our wisdom mocked by the Zud's attributes." Jerahab jumped into the conversation. "It can only mock and mimic while being corrupted. It is powerless otherwise. Sar is no more aware of the Zud's true power of suggestion than he is that we already know what is and is to come. I see the Zud's escalating aggressive influence is becoming fully manifested. We are watching the birth of violence." Nekhamabed cringed as he watched Sar's demonstration in another part of the table. "Look, Abaddon is there." Kohengal could hardly stomach Abaddon's arrival on a dam. "Let's send the Ophanim now." "I would rather patch that hole in the wall and stop this madness," suggested Nekhamabed as he gestured to the image of the portal. "We all know the order. Let us abide by what we agreed upon before this eternity began," reminded Jerahab in a lighter voice than the other 2 were using. "Nekhamabed, go and seal the locked gates. The Esoavel is about to make its grand entrance into the cosmos." Jerahab then moved toward the great temple. "I have a search party to send out," he jested as he disappeared through the wall. Kohengal stood there watching several of the events on the surface of the table. As he looked at a dam, he could feel his anger rise. His hand signaled for the current images to sink back into the deep, and he raised a scene from another time and another place. "For you, we will let this happen. For you, I will come," he whispered as a husband to his bride. Abaddon had been given a brief description of what Sar wanted accomplished on a dam. He waited until they had all arrived and Sidon first briefing the Isham. "It is of the utmost importance that we follow Sar's wishes for this stone. We are to reconstruct and label some of the monuments so that they face Rahab and no longer bear the scars of Or's oppression." Abaddon was impressed with the beginning of his own address. "Sar has chosen his 12 strong men to serve directly under him. We are to claim one of the 12 pyramids for each of his new princes, just as the prophecy of the coming king said. The monuments will now bear the names of Sar's 12 strong men. Because we are so close to the green stone, we have been instructed to reposition the face monument toward Rahab so that its light will shine on it. Then there will be no question of who is king. The last request is to destroy the 5-sided pyramid. It has no purpose in Sar's kingdom. It can only serve as a reminder that another once reigned, so leave no remnants of it. Establish your teams, pick your projects, and get started." Abaddon finished with an air of accomplishment about him. Jerahab was now sitting on the throne. He leaned his head back to gaze up at the singing seraphim. He relished feeling the wisp of air move against his cheeks as their wings moved back and forth. Then a deep sigh. He looked to a cherub. I have a task for you. Take your companion, the Ofen, and go to a dam. Collect Abaddon and every one of his Isham. Do not allow one change to be made to the red stone of fire. Go quickly, for you must have them collected before the Esoavel envelops the cosmos." Jerahab roared out the command. The words could not be understood beyond the great temple, but their power was felt through the whole of Olinthial. The ground shook so violently that the realm of the regions grabbed hold, thinking this was the call for their detachment. In the cosmos, the portal had opened full throttle. Abaddon's command on a dam had been the key to releasing the Esoavel. The sheer force of the Esoavel's arrival rocked the stones of fire and twisted the arrangement of stars in the heavens. Those on afar thought that Or had broken into the cosmos, and those in Olinthial thought they had missed Or's call to battle as Sar and his army broke through the locked gates. However, neither had happened. The Esoavel moved rapidly in a circular motion. It had already fully engulfed the outer edge and was now being propelled past the stones of fire. When it had sailed by rivets, it crashed into the eastern gates of Olinthial, shaking the walls and echoing a tremendous sound throughout Olinthial. The Esoavel tried to move into Olinthial by striking at each gate, but Nikamabed had already stamped each entrance with his flames of fire, making it impossible for the gray mist to penetrate Olinthial. The portal was allowed free access to the cosmos. The children watched the gray mist expand the cosmos past its limits. The remaining darkness of the outer edge was violently pounding against its hidden boundaries, creating a ring of antimatter. "Why isn't Or stopping it?" Rachel cried out. Rashawn found himself in another one of the sections where he was not going to be able to slow down his reading. The children turned to Rashawn, waiting for him to pause. Joshua recognized the situation as similar to when Rahab was first burning. "I think I know," Joshua jumped in to answer. "Or has to allow the cosmos to be pushed to its outer limits so the Esoavel can think it has the upper hand. This also has to happen so that it will lessen the effects of the Esoavel on our second age," Joshua declared with a new understanding. As the cosmos darkened from the increasing amount of Esoavel, their screen twitched. Rashawn was still describing the movement of the gray mist when the part of the screen shrunk and the larger screen focused on a dam. Suddenly, Rashawn's pace slowed, and so did the chapter. The cherub on the throne's west side sailed out of the temple, leading its Ofen straight for Adam. His fierce lion expression challenged the Adam intruders. The Ofen's eyes located every Isham on the stone. With a great vacuum sound, its sweeping triangular mouth sucked them in. Feathers and pieces of robes floated to the surface of Adam as Isham's bodies cruised through the air and vanished between the swirls of the mouth. Adam was still. The Esoavel weighed on the surrounding patches of the stone until the cherub and Ofen left. Then it crashed down around every untouched monument. Rashawn was pleased that the children were able to see a cherub travel on a mission. "Did you notice how he traveled and how his face changed?" he quizzed the children. The screen stopped. "That was so cool," Miklehi burst out. "His mane almost flattened at the speed he moved after his eagle face disappeared," interjected Sarah. "Rashawn, how did the Ofen move like that on a dam?" Aaron asked as a multitude of other questions were being thrown out. Rashawn needed a moment to sort out the questions from the comments. He did not want to miss this opportunity. "Let me quickly explain what we just witnessed. We watched the cherub and Ofen transport to a dam. We saw this so we can understand how he moved. The cherubim move according to their purpose. This one traveled with two faces showing. Can anyone guess why we saw the eagle and the lion face?" Rashawn posed, hoping to get them to take a breath and figure it out. "He was the closest one?" Morris guessed. "He was the fastest," Alyssa guessed. "I think it has something to do with the coming king and Or," Mia said confidently. "Mia, you are on the right track," Rashawn explained. "The cherubim travel showing the face of the orders they are carrying out. We saw the face of the eagle at first, representing Or's eternal power and deity. Then, as he got closer to Adam, it changed to the lion, which represents the coming king. Remember, the Ofen was to preserve the monuments for the coming king, so what better way to approach that than with the lion face? We will be seeing and hearing this type of symbolism quite often as we continue." Sar's princes had just completed training the army on the revelation of the Zud when the waves darkened. The skies were visibly saturated with the Esoavel. As the fog of gray mist reached the ground on afar, Sar's eyes began to burn. From the sounds of those around him, they were all experiencing the same thing. The Abirs began bucking as if something was on their backs. The Isham that were hovering just above the surface all landed, while those that were standing rose up. Their arms flapped in the air as their bodies twisted. Some of the Malaks fell to their knees as they clawed at their eyes, only to have their arms yanked up and behind them. "What is going on? Make it stop! I can't see! Who is pulling on me?" These were only some of the comments yelled out by the Angelics. Sar decided to force himself to stand. In the commotion, he threw his hands above his head for some unknown reason. Sar felt a violent twitching on his face. When he brought his hands down to his eyes, they were pushed away by a forceful motion. Sar was still standing when the burning sensation left. While opening his eyes, he could feel himself being hoisted up by a multitude of hands. Angelics from every direction were now staring at him, and Sar was staring back at them. Those carrying him moved slowly through the crowd and placed him at the first step of his throne. Sar was not sure what had just happened, but decided to enjoy the procession. He marched up to the top of his throne and turned to sit. In his swift movement, he realized he was no longer wearing his robe, nor were any of the other angelics. "That is the ugliest beast I have ever seen," Rachel proclaimed. "I wonder if that is where the idea of warthog came from," Andrew laughingly commented. Rashawn had to stop reading. He could not hold in his laughter. "You are a clever one," he let out between laughs. "Does Sar know what happened to his face?" asked Morris. Judging by his reaction, Rashawn speculated, "I would say no." During the invasion of the Esoavel on afar, the children saw the disrobing of all the angelics. The gray mist had blinded the angelics while their robes were being torn off and ripped apart. Shreds of material covered the ground like a blanket of snow. But just before the angelics could open their eyes, the material melted into the soil. The small screen had opened and Sar had been enlarged for the children to watch. They witnessed his robe slip off his shoulders from over his head when he thrust his arms up. Then his face became a blur, like the scene outside a bullet train's window. Everything moving too fast to have any defined lines, only mixtures of colors and forms which hint at what a passing object might have been. There were 4 sets of eyes crossing over each other's path. Sar's hands bounced off as the strong shaking of his faces reflected his touch. The 4 sets of eyes became horizontally stacked, then merged. Sar could see again. The disrobed angelics stood in their Zud armor devoid of any other covering. They thought Sar had disrobed them and changed his appearance in preparation for the battle. His eyes were fixed as amber almond slits. His hair waved like the mane of a lion, and the bridge of his nose arched out with a flare like an ox's, yet the shape of his cheeks remained manlike. "Where is the eagle face that the other cherubim have?" Aaron inquired. "Sar has never exhibited the eagle's face. He has always had the serpent's face instead. Remember, the seraphim are called the fiery serpents and also reflect a part of Or's nature. But what we call a serpent is only derived from what we see here. These serpents do not exactly look like the ones we have on afar now. Sar corrupted the positive aspect of the heavenly serpent. That is why we, in the second age, only see the serpent in a negative light. That will be an important pattern to watch. Let us watch for how the serpent earns his name and how Or uses the serpent for his glory," Rashawn concluded. He was ready to begin reading again from the book of Tebnithiod. High up on his throne, Sar looked out over his army. Even with the curvature of the ground, he could see his men. "My eyes are clearer than ever. I do believe this new air is good for us," Sar said to Bashan. "The army looks stronger as well." "They are stronger than ever," Bashan said as he inhaled deeply. "The smell of afar is now refreshing. I do not remember it smelling so good. This must be from your branding of the cosmos. Abaddon and the Isham should be back soon, judging from the changes we see." Azazel jumped into the conversation. "Sir, look at your men. They await your orders. I suggest that we collect some of Afar's horses to bring into battle, so that they might carry the burden of our weapons." Sar looked out and could see puffs of dark gray steam coming from the nostrils of the Abirs. He was impressed at how most were now standing solidly on their hind legs. He thought that their muscles even looked as if they had elongated. Their hair was now a shadow in their armor. All of the Isham's feathers on their wings were covered with silver residue of zood, which made them look like steel. They were clothed like medieval knights. Their eyes had become small and beady. "Go and collect the strongest horses. Bring me an assortment of colors," Sar directed Azazel. Bashan wondered how the horses would do under the load of weapons, but chose not to address his concern. "Are you going to wait for Abaddon and his men, Your Majesty?" he asked. Sar never tired of hearing that title. "I will send you and the other princes out with the army, while I wait for Abaddon. Once he and the others arrive, we will meet you in the northern sector. It would be nice if the northern throne was already waiting for me when I arrive." Sar added the last bit as a hint that he expected the battle to be over quickly. "I want a proper departure for my army. Arrange for them to bow before my throne as they march out to conquer Olinthial." Bashan called to jealousy and infirmity. "Prepare to move out. You know your assigned locations and gates. Round up your men. Follow the instruction I gave you before the gray mist arrived," Bashan barked out to the other princes. Sar twitched at Bashan's last comment. What instructions did he give? The sound of a stampede flooded the area. They galloped into the fields beside the army's formation. Then without a signal, the horses paraded themselves before Sar's throne. The lead horse stopped directly in front of Sar and lowered his head. He was a flawless white stallion of grand stature. "I would be honored if you rode me into battle," the horse addressed Sar. "Are all of your herds willing to have riders?" Sar questioned back. "There are some that would prefer to bear your loads. Then there are those of us who would consider it an honor to have the angelics of your army upon our backs. You are their leader, no doubt?" "Sir, I was their leader, but I give you that title, for you do sit on top of a pyramid and your throne completes the design. I would say by this sign alone, you are the king." Sar was pleased that the creature had recognized the meaning of Azazel's design. "After the battle, I will have to return to Afar and have the capstone placed upon the pillar with my name for all to see," Sar thought. He then returned his attention to the audience before him. "Valiant creature, lead your throngs into battle, and I will meet you there. You will carry me to my throne in the northern sector and be sheltered with me there," promised Sar. The horse shook his head with pleasure and let out a loud neigh. Rashan slowed down his reading, ready for a question about the talking horse. The children were whispering back and forth, but no one asked the obvious question. Rashan was not going to stop if he did not need to. Then the screen split. Or had anticipated this moment. There were trees waving in the wind and a sundry of animals below them. "It looks like they are having a meeting," Andrew said, "and they don't look very happy. Rashan, can you read that part of the screen so it will have sound?" "No, it seems to be another coded piece of information tied in with the horses honoring Sar," replied Rashan. "Are you telling me that all of the animals on Afar can talk?" Aaron and Joshua both asked. That was it. Rashan had to pause. "Everything in the cosmos has a voice," Rashan began. "Or created everything to sing his praises and bring him glory, including the trees, plants, minerals, stars, and animals. Many of their voices are not what we would call voices. However, some of them do share in the angelic language. We have not seen them talk because there was no need for it. The angelics have always harmonized with other living things. We have witnessed it happening, but because it was in perfect sync, we did not realize it was taking place. Now that the Esoavel is loose, the harmony is broken, and things in nature are finding themselves in a world they do not know." There was perfect silence after his comments. He returned to reading. The sentence had ended abruptly and a topic change snuck by. The larger screen showed the angelics marching past Sar in long flank formations, pausing to bow before him. But there was no sound. The smaller split screen was bubbling with conversation. "Well, I saw the white stallion lead his herds and a few others to his throne," came a voice from low on the ground. "I can barely stand the stench of Sar's men and that gray stuff all over the place," stated a voice from high above. I don't know about you, but I will not move if he orders me to. I will require the order to come from Orr's own mouth before I will heed his command. Did you see what he did to those trees? And for no reason at all. There has to be a way to get to Olinthial and back into the pure light, a bed of flowers sang out. Did you see how Sar's men treated the flock of sheep? Asked a small animal. I am sure that Orr does not condone their methods, retorted another animal. I am going to sing what I know. Who wants to join me? A tree declared. In unison, almost everything between the ground and the sky rang out with what was believed by the children to be music, though it was nothing they personally recognized. It sounded like a million languages being spoken at one time. Does nature do that on afar, Rashawn? Rachel asked, hoping the answer was yes. Everything in nature has a voice, even in the second age, only we are not able to recognize it. For example, have you ever heard the crickets and whales singing Orr's praises? No, announced the children. Those in Olinthial can hear it during our age, and we can too with some manipulation in frequencies, Rashawn replied. He looked back down at the page and could see a series of musical notes jotted down. He could not read them and was unsure of how to handle this part. He simply read the only word he could make out, Selah.